Mother's Day is a fun day. I'm a mom, so I get to enjoy Mother's Day. But we probably should have every day. I don't know, moms, we really should petition for that. But anyways, that's why Father's Day, we don't really do anything for fathers. Like, come on, let's be honest. Every day is Father's Day, right? Somebody cooks for you, somebody cleans for you, somebody makes sure all the doctor's appointments are done. Every day is Father's Day. And so maybe we need more than one day. So if you haven't gone out and got your mom something for Mother's Day, I asked a couple of the kids, oh, what'd you get your mom for Mother's Day? I don't know. I said, well, the day's still early, so you can go out. So if you haven't bought that special lady in your life something, I'm going to let you in on a secret of what really, and moms, if I'm wrong about this, go ahead and correct me, or even just women in general. But I think this is really at the top of every mom's list. I know exactly what she wants. She wants to be left alone. Without you. Without anybody. That's what we want for one day. Actually, I know exactly what she wants, and not only does she want to be left alone, she wants to be left alone in her clean house that you've cleaned the way she likes. Come on, women. There's a reason why these men don't do it, right? It's because as soon as I say she wants to be left in a clean house, some of you men just said, right. I believe Jamie told me this morning that Xavier picked up after himself. It looks very similar to not picking up after yourself. When men pick up after themselves, right? And it's like, hey, I cleaned the kitchen. Did you? Okay. I kind of feel like I need to go behind you. Re-clean it. Or, come on, how many moms is confession time, or women? How many of you, because I know I do this, and I'm sure that my family knows that I do this, because if Mark loads the dishwasher, and then I come in behind him, reload it. Because it's not the most functioning way to get them all, so I move everything around. And I know Mark must know that, because when he goes to unload it, he's like, that is an amazing dishwasher that I can put it in one way, and it comes out in a whole different way. Right? That's crazy. They're so clean, they get up and move to the bottom shelf, some of those dishes. Right? So how many of you are like that, that you redo when, okay, good, yeah, that's nice. Some of us, we're control freaks, right? But that's really, it's funny because and I wonder how many moms have planned their Mother's Day. It's kind of like, Kayla asked me last night, what are we doing for Mother's Day? I said, I don't know, what are we doing? I'm the mom, right? And so, I haven't planned anything, so you let me know what we're doing for Mother's Day. But Mother's Day, we're still kind of on, right? It's like, we're going to go, we're going to do this, but really, the greatest thing is like, how about this? I get up in fact, I told Mark last night, I said, let's not go to church tomorrow. I just feel like staying home. I should do that next Mother's Day, and then I'll have Eddie say, guess what Renee wanted for Mother's Day? And we're giving it to her, so you're dismissed. Wouldn't that be nice, right? And so we really want a day where we don't have to do anything, we don't have to plan everything, we don't have to organize everything, and we would really love it if you would leave and not come back for a long time, And do exactly, especially when your kids, and moms that have young kids, you need to, it's okay, let your husband or your better half, whatever you want to call it, take care of the kids the way he's going to take. Well, where are you going to take them? What are you going to do? How long? I don't think you should do that. No. Just let them go. Be gone for an extended period of time. So much time that your wife or the mother of the children can watch TV, and she can watch whatever she wants. Doesn't have to worry about tormenting her little child's mind, right? She can take a nap. She can eat. She can do a lot of different things. So no, we're not talking about 45 minutes here. We're talking about sun up till bedtime. That'd be great. Right? How many moms do you want that for Mother's Day? There you go. And yet every restaurant will be packed this afternoon. Right? Nobody's getting what they really want. And a flower. We got our flower. There you go. So the reality is us moms seldom get alone time, and women seldom. This morning I really want to speak into everyone's life, because the truth that I'm going to speak about affects us all. But the reality is that the thing that I feel like the Lord wants to speak into women's life especially is this truth. But we seldom, us women, seldom get alone time because we are obsessed with controlling everything around us. Women are control freaks. In fact, I meant to bring this morning, I forgot, but Mark and I have these 2 mugs that I got from a friend or something. I've had them for years. And the mug says, "What stresses a woman out?" And there's literally rows of words and things that go all the way down to the saucer at the bottom, and it just, it's everything from our weight to money to marriage to just, there's so many things, and I wish I would remember to bring it in. There's the man's mug. What stresses a man out? A woman. You see how simple their life is? Right? They only have to stress over one thing. We have to stress over so much more. We are control freaks. Right? How many of you are self-confessed? "Hi, my name's Renee. I'm a control freak." Thank you. Okay, good. Jerry, raise your hand. Come on. I'll call you out. Right? What? Do you want me to call Nick? I have him on speed dial. Oh, he'll answer it he'll answer for his spiritual mom. Renee's calling. "Is your mom a control freak?" He's going to be laughing. That's what Nick's going to be doing. The reality is that if we even take a day off, and you moms or you women know this, if we take a day off, it will cost us so many days to take that day off, right? Because why? We have to fix everything, whoever we left in charge for the last day to fix. Clearly. Women, we really do live with this illusion, or should I say delusion, that the universe will actually fall apart if we are not in control somehow. I think it's a reality. Somehow, many of us women have been convinced that it is our duty to rule the world and set everything in our own little universe right. After all, if we don't inform, if we don't correct everyone in our life, what they're doing wrong, all these type of things, we are convinced that the world will actually, how somebody says, is the world going to come to an end? You moms have said that to your kids, right? Is the world going to come to an end if you don't do so-and-so? And it's like, I think as moms, you kids need to say that to your mom. "Mom, is the world going to come to an end if..." "Yeah, well, at least yours is." That's what's going to come back, just so you know if you say that. Right? I'm actually not afraid. I'll just be transparent here, because some of you women may relate to this, right? Some of you women probably would prefer that the husband passes before you. Because there's no way you're going to be able to handle it if you go first. I've thought this with my husband. When I'm on a plane, I'm not afraid to die. I'll just be honest with you. It doesn't, how I die, yes. I don't want to drown and I don't want to burn alive. But other than that, I'm good to go. There's days where I'm like, "Jesus, this would be a good day," not to tell you what to do, but now would be good. So I'm fine with dying and moving on to be with God and Jesus in that happy place, not here anymore. But when I'm on a plane, we all think about it when we're on a plane, right? Once you get on the plane, you think, "This is it. This could be it." Right? This is it. The plane could go down. I could die. It's funny that, on a side note about that, I was telling somebody who gets nervous about flying, she goes, "Every time I get on the plane, I think, this could be it. I could die." And I told this person, I said, "Do you do that when you get in a car? Because do you know that you have a greater chance of dying every time you get behind the wheel of a car than you do a plane? You actually have a greater chance. So every time you get in your car, you should say that. This could be it. And if you live in Stockton, it increases." But every time I get on a plane, so I think, and in all honesty, one of the things that I think about is if I were to die, I think, man, I'm going to have to, I've literally thought about, Mark doesn't even know this, I'm saying this out loud right now. I've literally thought about making a video to leave him some instructions about how to love these girls and grandkids. I'm like, okay, here we go. Step 1, pay attention. I know you're not. You're probably watching YouTube. So look alive right now. I'm talking right now. That's how I'm going to do the video, because I know what he'll be doing while he's watching my recording. Somehow we do have this. But I want to, this morning I really want to set women free. I want to set you free this morning. I want to set you free from being in charge and being in control. You know, that's actually an illusion. Yeah. It is an illusion. We really don't have as much control as we like to think that we do. The men in our life are terrified enough of us to make us think that we have control, but we really don't have that much control. Right? And I don't want it just to be for today. I want to speak this truth into your life, because even if you have to write it on your mirror or wherever it is that you look, put something that says, I am not in control. I need to be set free. And I want you to be set free to be cherished and to be cared for. Because that's the one day that happens, right? It's like, what are we going to do? Right? Let's make your breakfast. Whatever it is you want to do for the day. You know, we just want you to relax. We don't want you to do anything, although I don't know what percentage of moms that actually happens on Mother's Day. But right, there's this, I mean, it sounds good, it looks good. You know, you get the breakfast in bed that you're going to have to clean up and change the sheets later. But, you know, you're going, great, this is going to cost me. They've made a mess in the kitchen, I don't even want to see it, right? But I want it to be something that you guys live every day. Because the reality is it's a truth that I have come to live from. That truth. And I have been set free from the controlling and having to do everything. As funny as it is to talk about, I embrace just being cherished by God and through my family and getting to see all that. So I really want to set you guys free this morning for that. In many ways, most of you should know, in some ways all of us desire this, but women want to be cherished. And here's why women want to be cherished. Cherished is to just hold dear. It's kind of like to belong. And here's why women want to be cherished. Because we cherish. We cherish those in our life. Cherishing is what drives mothers, it's what drives women to do what we do, is because we cherish those that belong to us. Whether it be children, adopted children, husbands, boyfriends, things in your life, women kind of naturally cherish. Do you know that the Bible doesn't specifically say women love your husbands? Do you know why? Because it's a natural thing that you've been created. Now, respecting and submitting, that's what we are told to do. But do you know that men are commanded to love their wives? Because it doesn't come as natural as it does for women. Women, we are naturally loving, naturally cherishing. And part of that is because how God created us to be able to give life and understand that belonging. We can understand how God feels about us better than a man can, believe it or not. Because our children are part of us. They are part of us. And the reality is every single one of us in here are part of God. There used to be a song years ago called The Fingerprints of God. I think it was Stephen Curtis Chapman used to sing that song. Does that sound familiar? And they would say, the fingerprints of God are all over you. The fingerprints of God are all over you guys. He had you in mind. He's the one who really gave you life. So as women, we get cherishing. And often even mothers more so because of this. But cherishing drives us. It drives us to do what we do, to control what we control. To cherish our family, our children, all those things. We cherish naturally. So we desperately want that same for us, right? Think about it like this. Some of you women have probably said this to yourself, but never out loud. I know I've said it out loud. But I thought, man, I could use a Renee in my life. I really got to get me a Renee in my life. Right? Somebody like, what's that mean? Yeah. Because what many of you might benefit from, you know, I have a lot of people like, you're like my mom, you're like my mom, you're like my mom. And it's like, I got to get me one of me. That'd be really cool to have one of these. Right? You women, you're kind of thinking that with your kids, right? So, yeah, I wish I had one of these. Right? So we get what it means to be cherished, to be held dear. Interesting, if you look up the word cherish and you look up an antonym, which is a word that means the opposite of cherish. And do you know it's actually the second synonym for it is relinquish. Relinquish is an antonym. It's a word totally opposite of cherish. And so, because I think of cherish as to belong. In many ways, that word cherish means to belong to another. Think about this. Moms in the room, when I say the word cherish, the first thing that comes to your mind is what? Your children. like, what do you cherish? What is it that you hold so dear? It's very easy for parents and moms and things to say our children or our spouses or those relationships that we belong to. So belonging is the key. And women, I really want to set you free this morning to belong. To truly be cherished and belong. And the reality is, I know some of you, when it's like, to surrender. It begins with surrender. The reality is, to belong has to begin with surrender. It begins with letting go of control. It begins with submission. Now I know, for some of you women, just the fact that I've said that, your heart started to race. What does this mean? What do you, okay, hold on. I have to let go of control? Yes. So don't panic. Right? Take a moment, take a heart pill. It's all good. Right? Because we're control freaks. The minute we start talking about surrender and submission, it's kind of like, yeah, it's a nice idea for my children to submit. It's a nice idea for my husband to submit. Let's not get crazy. If I submit, well, what's going to happen? The whole house is going to fall apart if I submit. But the reality is, to belong or to be cherished begins with surrender, begins with submission. The truth is submission is the beginning of belonging. We all want to belong, but we want to do it without submitting. It's kind of, think about it like this. I talked about how women kind of relate really well to God because God gave life. God gave every single one of you life, and He cherishes you. I mean, He cherishes you in the same way that a mother cherishes that child. And even more. It's hard to imagine, even more. Because it's not just this beautiful picture of a newborn baby and the mother, and oh, I cherish. No. What I want to give you the picture of how God cherishes you is that mother that's completely gray-haired at the age of 40 and has a teenager that she doesn't know where or he or she is, and who is totally running the streets, and she has no idea what to do. She wants to pull her hair out. Her husband's just sitting over there and he doesn't care. And this is the picture, and God cherishes that child that's out there running. That's really more of an accurate picture, because we're off doing what we want to do. We want to take charge. We want to run our own life. And God says, man, I cherish you. I want you to belong to me. And so we love the idea of loving God, belonging. It's kind of like when people say, I talked last week about obedience. There's power in obedience. We love to say we love God, but we don't obey God. And the truth is, if you love God, you'll obey God. There is submission in that love. But submission, we want to have this belonging with God. We want to be connected to God. But how can we do it without submitting? Well, you can't. Submission is the beginning of belonging. To be cherished is ultimately to belong. Which is how all of us, you were created with that need. Every single one of us were created to have a desire to belong. It's a very natural thing. It's one of the reasons that young people end up in wrong crowds, because they've been born with a need to belong. We've all been born to belong. God made you that way so that you would eventually find your Father. The only thing that you actually truly belong to. The family that you've been given is merely a pattern or a picture of who God is in our life. But the reality is, I belong to God. My Heavenly Father. That is who I will always belong to. It's who I belong to when I was knit together in my mother's womb. And it will be who I belong to when I am laid to rest. I belong to my Creator God. And when we can live in that place, oh my gosh, it's glorious. It sets us free from belonging to all these other things that want to own us. There's a world full of people that's seeking to belong, and so we're trying to get from people, and people, you hear me say it often, we suck life from each other. I want you to think about like this. Adam and Eve, in the creation account, there was the tree of life. And when they ate from the tree of life, they lived forever, and they had no need for anything, or God was their source of life totally. They were almost kind of unaware of themselves and almost each other. It wasn't until they began to eat from the tree of death, as I like to call it, the tree of I don't want to submit. And the minute they ate from that fruit, they looked at each other. And I've said this before, oftentimes in discipleship, that once they did that, the very thing that they got from the tree of life, they now look to get from each other. So now I expect you to give me what I was getting from that. And so we live in a world full of people that are sucking life from each other instead of going to the source, because Jesus made it so we can reach back and take from that tree of life. I don't need you to validate me. My Creator God has done that and affirmed it through Jesus Christ and what He did on the cross. Yes. I belong to Him. I could be rejected by the whole world and it will not matter as long as He has not rejected me. I eat from the tree of life. I belong. And all of us have this desire to belong. We were created that way. In fact, in Ephesians it talks about that we were technically designed that way. He predestined us to belong. It's beautiful. I love Ephesians chapter 1 because Paul sets the stage. It's a letter he's writing to the Christian church in Ephesus. And he's really painting a picture. If you ever just want to get a kind of snapshot of God, us, in a very simple way, Ephesians does that. It begins with this beautiful, we have been blessed in the spiritual realm to receive everything that God has. It's kind of like Paul saying, hey, I have good news. Jesus opened up the way back to that tree of life. And created, and I made it so that you can digest that. It created you in such a way that you could crave that. So this beginning picture, he talks about this, and so Ephesians 1:4-5 says that, for He chose us in Him before the creation of the world. He breathed in love for us. He predestined us. He predetermined. That doesn't mean you don't have a choice. Right? How many of you moms, of course, you have done everything in your power as you're raising these little children to grow up, to be successful, to be able to experience love and happiness and all those things. You are doing things to pave the way for them to do that. Right? Now, that doesn't mean that, you've done such a spectacular job, there's no way they're not going to try. No. They still have a will. You can't take that away. So God predetermined that all of us would be holy and blameless. Well, you think, that's hard. No, it's not if you live attached to the tree of life. He predestined us to live the way Adam and Eve lived before they ate from the tree of death. To be so unaware of my needs, it's easy for me to care for others. Because my needs are always met. I don't need to worry about running out of God's love. I don't need to worry about running out of His acceptance for me. I don't need to worry about that. I have an endless supply. It never runs dry. I have found that well that Jesus told the woman in John chapter 4 about. Jesus says, I have a well where you can get water and it never ends. And you don't need anything to get it. Where is it? Jesus says, I am the living water. Take from me all you want. I have been given for you. And so it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. He chose us in Him. He predestined us, pre-planned for us to be adopted. So He knew we were going to not want to submit. He knew that Adam and Eve were going to eat from that tree. He knew they were going to disobey. And so He pre-planned that He would have to adopt us back. He knew that He was going to have to do that. So He pre-planned that. That's how much He cherishes us. That's how much He loves us. There's a song, a verse in the Song of Songs, which is a Song of Solomon. King Solomon was King David's son. He was known for being the wisest of all because that's what he asked from God. That you would give me your wisdom because I am but a child. So he asked for wisdom and God, the scriptures say, gave him. King Solomon is the one who wrote the majority of the Proverbs in your Bible. Proverbs are wise statements. That's really what a proverb is. And there's 31 Proverbs, right? And so, for the most part, he didn't write all of them, but King Solomon wrote a lot of those wise statements. He also wrote what's called the Song of Solomon or Song of Songs. Now, if you're really into romance novels and things like that, that's a good book for you to read. And if you've read it, you know what I'm talking about. Some of you actually feel like you're sinning when you read it. It's like, is it okay to read this stuff? This seems kind of nasty, a little R-rated, right? And unfortunately, because in our culture, part of that taking from each other, right? We don't know what it is to love. Our culture is really, we live in a culture of lusting, not loving. I know that's hard to believe, but we lust after what we can get from somebody else. And so because we've so distorted physical intimacy that's a gift from God, we can look at it as kind of nasty, and it's actually not. It's actually a beautiful story. And it's a story that King Solomon is painting between a lover and her beloved, and his beloved. And so there's this relationship. And when you read it, the idea is that, man, this is the kind of love. You talk about feeling cherished by God. You see that there's this, it hits at that, almost like you say, it's like, oh, I feel like I'm reading somebody's personal love journal. You are. It's God's to you. And he loves you like that. I mean, he loves you. It says, I belong to my beloved, and his desire is for me. And that's God. God's desire for you. The Lord longs for you. His desire is for you to be his and his only. God is a jealous Father. He doesn't want you going and getting something from all these other places and people and things and possessions and all these things. What he wants is for you to receive from him what only he can give you. And many of us are seeking it in relationships. We're seeking it in money. We're seeking it in friendships. We're seeking it in careers. We're seeking it in even parenting and mother. Some of you define yourself, right? We hate Proverbs 31. Some of you women kind of cringe when I said Proverbs 31, right? Proverbs 31 has the wife of noble character, right? We don't like that. But the reality is, let me set you free on that. That's really not, you'll never ever hear me preach that for women. Because it's not really about women as much as it's about wisdom. And so, but that's a whole side note. Come on, Wednesday night and I can expound on that. But to belong to our beloved, his desire is for us to be his. I want you to hear God this morning. He wants you so badly. Think about it, girls. Okay, whether you're a mom or not, think about this. There's one of the most attractive qualities. Men, you should listen carefully, especially if you don't have a girlfriend. This is going to help you. We don't care. We do like if you smell nice, so put some deodorant. So that's up there. Maybe brush your teeth. But how you look, and whether you have a six-pack or all those kind of wonderful things, that's why it's always funny. It's kind of like, and men, women, okay, young people, close your ears. Just, if you don't want them to hear this. I'll try to be PG. But if you have a man in your life, how many of you have had the man that get out of the shower like, hey? And it's like, yeah, no, that does nothing for me. So put some clothes on. Okay? Women are not attracted to that kind of stuff. Not generally speaking. Some of you women are like, I'm a little, okay, well, you're a whole different class. But anyway, generally speaking, what attracts for a woman, what draws us is for a man to desire us. Whew. That's attractive. And we know it. And you just desire us for us. Not what we can do for you. There's a difference. Men, I'll preach that on Father's Day. No. But to just want us. There's something about that. And God wants you to know, that's how bad I want you. I want you. I love you. I gave my son for you. I paid the highest price there is for you. That's how much I love you. I want you to belong. Submission is the beginning of that belonging. Now, some of you women might be thinking, here we go. Here comes that dreaded verse. Yeah, see, she knows it. That's why she's giggling. She's like, oh gosh, I hate this verse. That verse that says, I have no voice. I have no value. I have no say. That verse that says, only my husband has control, God help us, that darn Ephesians 5:22. Every woman's favorite verse. Wives, submit to your husbands as you do to the Lord. Women just don't like it. Men love it. In fact, it's probably they probably memorized this before John 3:16. But they're like, what? Is there other books in the Bible? Yeah, there is. And so we hear this verse, and part of it is there is this natural rejection when it comes to submission. Submission in our culture is viewed as something to reject, something to fight. We see submission as weakness and vulnerability, which we also view as bad. We don't like words like submit. Generally, we're not just talking about women, but we resist that. Don't tell me what to do. Right? And it's a real struggle, especially for women. It is a struggle, and especially this verse. And we're going to look at this in a minute, and I'm going to help you understand the context of what this is saying. But actually, and to submit, so you understand, the word submit means to yield. That's really what that means. If you were to look it up, it's to yield. Right? Some of you were not familiar with that because we drive in Stockton and nobody ever yields. It's kind of like fight to the death. You just might make it to your workplace without getting rear-ended, right? Because nobody has it. I mean, you can put a yellow triangle up. Young people today would be like, what's that? Yield, right? Slow down and let somebody else go, right? It's something we're not familiar with. I have to be right. I have to be first. No one's going to look after me except for me. The struggle. And the reality is, guys, it's just as bad in the church as it is outside the church. And it shouldn't be. Should be one of the trademarks of Christianity, should be submission. People in the world should say, yeah, they're a Christian. Because I've never seen anybody that always lets everybody go first. I've never seen anybody be as humble as that person. Humility. You know, some of you are like, I'm humble. Not anymore. The very statement says you're not. To submit means to give oneself over to another's way or will. It's kind of like, have you ever and women, this is hard for us. It's kind of like, I'm going to let the dishwasher go like that, right? I'm not going to tell my husband and children how to clean to make it perfect. Okay? Is to just to empower somebody else to. Or have you ever been so right that you're just like going to come out of your skin if you can't just yell out that I'm right about this situation? Let it go. But you don't understand. It's like, let it go. Let it go. Can I post it on Facebook? No! No, I just mean like a statement, you know. Because doesn't that great about social media? You know who you are, right? Social media has become the avenue with which I can say things without saying them. You know, if you ever do that, it's like, they're talking about somebody, I don't know who they're talking about. I've always wanted to post on people's like, are you talking about me? Are you talking about me? I think you're talking about me. Oh no, it's your other friend, the one that you unfriended? Okay. But we're so passive that way. The reality is, submission is not a bad thing. It's an absolutely beautiful thing. I'm here to tell you something. Submission is glorious. If you can get over that initial hump of, oh gosh, it's going to be so painful. It's really not that painful. It's not that painful. We think it is because we're going to not get to have control. But it is. It's totally this beginning of belonging, which we all just spent a few moments realizing how great it would feel to belong. And you're not belonging because you're not submitting, because you're off on your own island doing your own thing, feeling very much alone. And you're tirelessly working to get everybody around you to affirm who you are. That's a lot of work. That's a great part about the well that Jesus offers. You don't get to control Jesus' well. You don't get to say, well, I go to church, I pray, I tithe, I do all these things, and Jesus is like, that's not what makes me love you. Nothing you can do can make God stop loving or cherishing you. There is nothing you can do. Nothing. You can tell him you hate him. Still gonna love you. And moms, don't we get that? You know that first time when you hear your kid say that, I hate you. It's like, oh, what? Let me get that pierce out of my heart. Right? God says, I'm still gonna love you. And no, you still have to go to bed, even though you hate me. It is an absolutely beautiful thing. Submission is truly the beginning of belonging. So I want us to take a moment, look at Ephesians chapter 5, and I just put the verse reference up there, because I want you guys to understand this Ephesians 21 through 33, it actually is it's such a, you need to understand, see, part of the problem is, that verse, wives submit yourselves to your own husbands as you do to the Lord. That is probably one of the most misrepresented, taken out of context scriptures. In fact, on a more sober note, there are men who abuse their wives with this. In the same way that parents abuse your children with Commandment 5. Honor your father and mother. So we take scriptures and we have to be careful that we're not taking them out of context. This is a beautiful picture, and you have to remember, and I don't know how many of you heard me say this, but the letter that Paul's writing to the church in Ephesus, he's writing to the church to show them who God is in relationship to them, and this relationship that he wants to have with them. And this is not just some little, hey, and by the way, wives, you need to be better at submitting. Husbands, you should love. Children don't obey your parents. Fathers, don't exasperate your children. Blah, 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 and then it goes into the spiritual armor. No, this fits in the context of what Paul is teaching about what it means to live in relationship to God. That's really what he's talking about in this scripture. He's trying to express that. You know that when you look at the greater picture or the story of God, from the beginning, in the beginning God, to the very end of Revelations, you see a glimpse into what God was desiring when he put his creation together. You know this thing we live called life? We try to relate to one another as husbands and wives, parents and children, co-workers, boss, employee, church members, neighbors living next door. This thing called life that we live. All of that has been given to us to really give us a picture or a pattern of what God intended. That mankind be created in the likeness of God. Go to Genesis chapter 2. God created man in his image, in his likeness. And man wasn't complete, so he made a suitable helper that would really complete mankind. Man and woman together make mankind. Not, well, I'm single. It's not about being single, it's not about being married. It's about we need both sides of that to make mankind in this world. We need men. Men, I cannot apologize. I apologize every Father's Day, but let me apologize again on Mother's Day. We live in a world, women, where we are tearing down men all the time. Constantly tearing them down, putting them down, all to lift us up. It's heartbreaking. But we were created to be the likeness of God together. How we relate to one another. Every time you look in the Bible, when it talks about these things, it's talking about what it means to live in a relationship with God, our Creator God. So when you look at Ephesians, believe it or not, right before verse 22, and some of you women might want to memorize this, it actually says, submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. This is after he's kind of gone over what does a Christian life look like lived out? What are some rules for Christian living? And he talks about how we should talk, how we should use the things that we've been given to help other people, how we should bear with one another, how we should forgive one another. He's talking about, then he goes into this 5 and he says, now submit, yield yourself to one another out of reverence for Christ. And then he says, wives, submit yourselves to your own husbands as you do to the Lord. For the husband is the head of the wife, as Christ is the head of the church, his body, of which he is the Savior. There is an order to everything. And we don't listen, well, why can't I be the head? I don't know. Why did we eat the apple? Thank you, Eve. You can have that conversation with her when you die someday. But this is the way, you know that this picture that we see, you guys, this is how lived before they ate from that tree. They just weren't aware of it. It's not like God says, well, now I got to come up with some rules. You guys went and ate from that tree. Let me figure out how you can get along. Well, one of you has to be in charge. Well, I'm going to pick Adam because Eve, you technically ate the fruit. You gave it to him. So, no. No. Everything you see was already that way. It's just they weren't aware of it. Now we have to, so he says, okay, now I have to tell you. These are the things, these are the rules. These were all in place before Adam and Eve ate from the fruit. Now we just have to be told, and if we really want to belong back to God again, we must submit to his way. Now, as the church submits to Christ, so also wives submit to their husbands. So he's painting this picture of what should happen in a godly family is what the church should look like. He's actually talking about the church. This really isn't an isolated thing about husbands and wives. Although, yes, husbands should love their wives, and wives should respect their husbands, and when they do it, it's a beautiful thing. He goes on to say, husbands, love your wives, just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her to make her holy, cleansing her by the washing with water through the word, to present her to himself as a radiant church, without stain or wrinkle, any blemish, but holy and blameless. I don't know about you women, but I'm grateful I'm a woman. Do you hear the role that men have? That men have to present. Can you imagine being a husband in today's world, women? That we have to take an obstinate, non-submissive woman and do our best to present her to God. Because how many men are going to stand there going, I tried, but she wouldn't listen. Go ahead, tell them. Right. And do you know how hard it would be to love somebody that's disrespectful, that's controlling, that's all these kind of things? But that's what they're to do. A husband is to love. And so there's a picture here of how Christ loves us. I go back to, remember, it's not like, oh, God cherishes us the way mom does an infant. No, he cherishes us the way a mom and dad cherish that wayward, obstinate teenage child. That's how he cherishes us. And he loves us. He doesn't lord it over us. Jesus, every time you look at the Gospels and somebody came to Jesus, prostitutes, sinners, tax collectors, crooks, thieves, people that were dirty, people that nobody would touch, never once do you see Jesus go, clean yourself up. Go clean yourself up. You know, maybe if you weren't a prostitute, you wouldn't have that problem. Nope, that's not the Jesus I see. I see a Jesus who touches the untouchable, who hugs the prostitute, who gives worth to the worthless. That's how Jesus feels about us. And that's what us women should be experiencing. That's what Paul's talking about. He says, this is really when it's lived out. This is what it looks like. Where a husband loves and just absolutely cherishes to the point that he would give his life for her, no matter what, who she is, just to love her. And her love would just change, it would change her life. Mark and I have done marriage counseling for many years. We've done marriage groups and everything called Love and Respect, teaching women how to respect their husbands and men how to love their wives. And there's a thing in the study that says there's a reward cycle and a crazy cycle. And the reality is, most marriages are on a crazy cycle. Because the woman says, yeah, I'll respect him when he's respectable. So you're kind of obstinate. So you know what that makes your husband? Angry. And he feels disrespected, which he needs to feel respected. In fact, just in the same way for men, it's not always about being a size 1 supermodel person. But to have a woman respect them and build them up, that's attractive. That's attractive. So when they feel disrespected, you know how they treat you? Unloving. And when you feel unloved, you treat them with disrespect. And they feel even more disrespect, and it almost becomes a contest. We've literally been in marriage counseling before where we've been with a group and we told them, because the book study talks about it, that if only one of you changes, it'll change your whole marriage. If just one of you will change, it will change the trajectory of that cycle. In other words, wives, if you will respect and build up your husband and submit to him the way you do to Christ, right? Because I know you're super obedient to God. And so kind of like that, being really obedient and submissive, your husband is going to be, all of a sudden you're feeling cherished and loved, and so it can totally change the trajectory of that. We were in a group one time, and one of the women spoke up. There's about 5 couples. She said, well, I'll tell you right now, it won't be me. They didn't come after that. I'm not going to submit. I'll submit when he's loving. And he's like, I'll love you when you're respectful. And what's really cool about this whole thing, you guys, when you look down at verse 32, it says, this is a profound mystery, but I'm talking about Christ and the church. It's talking about the picture of Christ that has with us. God desperately wants you to belong. His original design and plan to hold us dear, to bring us back to that place. The question is, do you belong to God? Do you belong to your Creator God? Believe it or not, the longing of all of our hearts is to belong. Is to belong. Those of us, women and men in this church, who have learned the art of submission, live with a peace that truly does transcend all understanding. I completely embraced it. It's wonderful. Because I'm going to tell you right now, I am a self-confessed, hi, my name is Renee, I'm a control freak. Right? And I really ruled my family early on. I mean, Mark and I, when we were first together, it might surprise you, but maybe not. But I could lecture him at the end of the bed, and I'd be so mad at him. I'm embarrassed to even say this. But I could start about 10 o'clock at night, and I could go until about 2 in the morning. I know, impressive, right? Should have videotaped it. Nothing to brag about. But I would control my kids, lecture them. I would stand in the room and lecture. My husband would say from the other room, in conclusion, Renee, thank you. Okay, control. And when I really came to realize and embrace this, my life completely changed. I, for the first time, experienced peace, surrender. You guys, especially you women, there is so much peace in submission. There is so much peace in it. Because I don't have to worry. Oftentimes I tell people in marriage counseling, Mark and I together, I just can't trust my husband. I can't trust him. I'm not asking you to trust him. I'm asking you to trust the Lord. Do you trust him? Do you trust him? Then obey. Obey. Submission is the beginning of belonging. Women, are you free this morning? Free to belong. To let go and let God have total control. The question I want all of you to kind of ponder as we get ready to move into a time of just responding to what God is saying is, who is it that you belong to? What is it that owns you? Something does. To think that you're not owned by something, you guys, is a lie of the devil. We're all mastered by something. The question you need to answer is, what is it? What owns me? Is it what others think? Is it how much money I have? Is it how my family or children behave? Is it how successful my life is running? Is it how I look? The question for all of us has to really sit with that this morning. Do I belong to God? Is He who I go to? Is that the well that I draw on? Or have I all these other wells that I've created in my life, my family, my kids, my profession, what I look like, all these kinds of things. I go to them to validate me, validate me, validate me, validate me, cherish me, cherish me, cherish me. Right? And we just work and work and work, and we tire ourselves out. And then there's this well that Jesus offers. And I wonder how many of you really go to that well. I wonder if you really go to that well. And I wonder how many of you know how to go to that well. How many of you are going to your Jesus well, and you're like, well, I feel like I get what I need from Jesus when I'm doing really good. Then you're not going to the Jesus well. You're not going to the Jesus well. Because Jesus does, you don't come up to the well and Jesus, well, how have you been doing? What'd you do last week? Go apologize, come back, I'll give you some water. Do you know how many of us would die of starvation if that was the case? If every time we went up to Jesus said this, like, oh, sorry, there's one more thing. We'd be dead. If he waited for us to figure it out, we'd be dead. But he just pours into us. Pours into us. Submission sets us on the right path. Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, right? Most of you know this. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. See, most of us women, we need to hear this verse. You should memorize it. Lean not on our own understanding. In all your ways, submit to God, and he will make your path straight. Submission sets you on a right path. It keeps you on level ground. Peace. Oh my gosh. Peace. Submission, ladies, not your control. Submission keeps the enemy and the evil at bay. Right? Submit to God, resist the devil, and he will flee. James 4:7. Right? Some of you, man, he's just banging down your door. He's just banging down your door. Keep us at bay. To keep the enemy at bay is submission. I want to tell you something, you guys. In the same way that husbands cover their wives with love, that's the picture of Christ covering you. With his blood, with his life, he desires to enter into this covenant relationship. When I married Mark, I gave my life to Mark, and Mark gave his life to me, and we became one. When you gave your life to God, God gave his life to you through Jesus Christ. It is a beautiful relationship that he so badly wants to have with you, but doesn't with some of you. And he's just waiting for you to belong to him again.